Hi there, Phil the Practical Gardener again. This particular topic is about the placement of fruit trees within your garden. I'm going to be looking at this from three different perspectives. First of all, the importance of getting maximum productivity, that is to say, cropping or production out of your fruit trees. Secondly, the ease of management of them, so that you will be able to manage them over time to keep them within size, and also to ensure that you can do your pruning and training and get around them. Finally, from a landscaping perspective, because in our properties almost invariably we actually want to have an ornamental or decorative dimension to our garden, so we're going to look at it from a landscaping perspective. So without more ado, let's get into it. So firstly, productivity. The first thing is that most fruit trees, in fact almost all fruit trees, actually need maximum sunlight to actually grow and produce effectively. In particular, this goes for things such as olives or figs or citrus, which have a very high need for strong sunlight. However, all fruit trees would actually fall within this category. There are other aspects to this also. Fruit trees usually need some form of pollination, usually by honeybees, and they don't actually operate well under windy conditions. So you should actually make sure that your fruit trees have got a reasonable degree of shelter where you're growing them. A lot of them actually require a cross-pollination between different varieties or species within that same group of trees, such as stone fruit. So therefore, if you are growing several, you might want them in reasonably close proximity so that they will cross-pollinate between the two of them. This isn't quite as much issue as you might think, because very often your neighbours will actually have that same type of fruit tree, and the bees of course will pollinate from those ones onto your ones. Just over the fence there is actually an apple tree which is on my neighbour's, and that acts to pollinate my ones. You also need to think how you're going to actually harvest the fruit. In my particular case here, my neighbour actually has the apple tree which grows over his fence, and the only person who can actually harvest those fruit is actually myself. That is something else to keep in mind. Minchie just came, he just wants to say hello. Hello Minchie. Meow. The second aspect to consider is ease of management. A lot of fruit trees will actually grow quite large. I'm looking here particularly at pip fruit and stone fruit. So for example, a standard apple grown as a centre leader, which is the usual way of growing a tree on a semi-dwarfing rootstock, will actually require quite a lot of room. Around about 3 metres by 3 metres, that is 10 foot by 10 foot, or 100 square feet, or 9 or 10 square metres. That's quite a lot of room. And the tendency is to put them too close to one another, so we think we're actually going to get the maximum amount of fruiting off that. Also, of course, when we put them in the ground, the trees are very small, so that they look quite isolated if we put them well apart. But in reality, we do need to think about the ultimate size that they're going to grow. It's not just the area that they need, it's also the ability to get around them. I've got an apple tree here and also a plum. It's actually quite a struggle for me to get between them and the boundary fence and the other structures that I have when I actually want to prune and train and also harvest the fruit. It's something that we do have to put up with some degree in domestic suburban properties. However, it's best not to let this become too much of a limitation. Another problem that can occur if you put your trees too close together is that they will naturally draw up towards the light, and they might grow above the height that you are able to manage them. Underneath the fruit trees themselves, you can have a mulch, sometimes a lawn. I generally suggest that you grow flowers on them, companion plants. The plants that I grow are nasturtiums and shiny angelica, which will ramble quite happily over the ground. They don't mind if I walk on them to some degree, and they will act as companion plants. The third aspect to think about is the landscape design dimension. Now, I have done several videos about how to think about your property overall in terms of creating garden rooms, and fruit trees can fit within that. For example, you could use berry fruit such as raspberries or brambles as a divider between your garden rooms. So I do suggest that you look at that particular video because it is a very useful landscaping concept. Also, think about the attractiveness of the plants. Quite a lot of fruit trees, such as pears or peaches, have got very attractive flowers. However, they are only present for a very short period, so it pays not to think too much about them in terms of permanent landscaping features. And those trees, of course, will have no leaves at all for some of the year, and really they're not particularly attractive trees when they're out of leaf. So I would suggest that you don't use them as a landscaping feature within the core parts of your garden. Others to consider would be more evergreen trees. Olive trees, for example, are a very attractive feature year-round, and you can actually grow them as a canopy tree or even as a hedging tree, and if you manage them right, they will still fruit. Citrus, of course, which I have here, this is a young lemon tree, and the grapevine, of course, they're also compatible with a lot of different landscaping styles, and also at the same time you can grow them in such a way that you will get maximum productivity out of them. So that is the range of aspects that I would consider when deciding how to incorporate fruit trees within my garden. Just a reminder that this is one of a series of tips that I'm producing about different aspects of fruit tree growing. So I do suggest that you look at the others because they all actually integrate together. Also, I suggest that you look at the clips that I've produced about soil management, because that is a critical part of success with fruit trees. And of course I have got the full range of 25 playlists, and I also have got a range of landscaping design topics within that. Now, I'd be very interested in your comments about how you place your fruit trees within the garden, the positive and negative experiences that you might have had. Also, of course, like this tip and share it with others who you think might be interested. And finally, thanks for watching this clip right through to the end. Bye for now.